Welcome to today's American Community Media Briefing, co-hosted by the California Department of Aging. I'm Sandy Close, Director of American Community Media and your moderator. Our topic today is caregiving in California. Caregiving that involves an infrastructure of close to 7 million family and informal caregivers who provide care for millions of older adults and people with disabilities. Caregiving is a topic that touches or has touched directly most of us on this call. It has certainly impacted my life. Yet even as caregivers form the backbone of our healthcare system, many of the dedicated people who provide care don't consider themselves to be caregivers. As a result, they miss out on information, services, and resources that could support them as they find themselves dealing with the impact caregiving can have from physical strain, emotional stress, social isolation, and financial pressure. Today's briefing is part of an ongoing series in partnership with the Department of Aging that aims to bridge this awareness gap, even as we explore the broader concept of what care means and why it matters in today's uncertain times. Our briefing salutes November as National Family Caregivers Month, which seeks to honor some 63 million family and informal caregivers in the United States. Our panelists today are Susan DeMarois, Director of the California Department of Aging, Dr. Donna Benton, Director of the USC Family Caregivers Support Center, and the Los Angeles Caregiver Resource Center. Paul Dunaway, Director, Sonoma County Adult and Aging Division, California Association of Area Agencies on Aging. Dan Salinger, a family caregiver, and Alma Valencia, also a family caregiver. And both our two caregivers also have created a presence for themselves and their caregiving experiences on social media. We'll share that information with you as we send expanded bios and contact information for the speakers to everyone on the call, along with a recording and transcript of the briefing. We invite reporters to post questions in the chat. We encourage speakers to monitor the questions and answer those particularly relevant to them. We will make as much time for Q&A throughout the briefing as we can. We ask speakers to speak slowly, as I'm doing, so that our simultaneous interpreters in Korean, Mandarin, and Spanish can follow what we're saying. Often speakers don't realize that they go too fast to adequately capture them in even the best interpreting. Now we begin, and I'm honored to ask Susan DeMarois to open our conference officially. Susan, thank you.
Sandy, thank you very much, and to your staff team. And I'm just very grateful that you've assembled us all. I love that you chose the word salute, that we can salute the family caregivers among us, Alma and Dan. I'm just humbled to be joining you today on this panel, and to our experts, Paul and Donna, thank you for giving your time. This is the realization of our work that at the California Department of Aging, it is so important that the 7 million family caregivers in California, family members, friends, neighbors, acquaintances, can know that there are resources and people they can turn to so they never feel alone in their caregiving journey. I cared for my dad, who first developed heart issues when I was in high school. And in his later years, he lived about 4 miles from me. So I was a very hands-on caregiver with my dad. My mom developed dementia and Alzheimer's disease. She lived in rural Northern California. My care and support for my mom was more intermittent because we were separated. And she lived in a very remote part of our state that was hard to access and did not have a lot of services. So this topic is very important to me. It's very important to my family. And I know it's very important to your readers and your listeners as well, because half of adults in America help a loved one with everyday tasks. Something we really want to get across from the California Department of Aging is, if you ask a caregiver, "Are you a caregiver?" they will probably say no. But when you ask, "Do you drive a loved one to medical appointments? Do you pick up prescriptions? Do you cook and deliver or drop off meals?" These are basic tasks that really help our family and friends. And then there are also many more intimate tasks, very intimate tasks, where family members and friends are providing care that is otherwise provided in assisted living communities, in nursing homes, and in hospitals. So we honor all caregivers. If you're providing occasional or intermittent support, or if you're providing round-the-clock care in the home, we recognize all of you. And we really want to close the awareness gap. And that's why I'm just so grateful for all the journalists who are joining us today to help get the word out, especially into underrepresented and underserved communities. You really can help us to convey accurate information and share the resources that are available. If these resources can help alleviate the impact of caregiving, the physical strain, the emotional stress, burnout, financial pressure, and social isolation, thank you. You're helping us help caregivers. So thank you for listening in today. California has a proud history. For over 50 years, we have supported a network of area agencies on aging. We call them AAAs. You'll hear from Paul Dunaway about the role that AAAs serve. They're available in all 58 counties in California. They all provide caregiver supports. We also have a 40-year history of supporting a network of caregiver resource centers, CRCs, we call them. And you'll hear from Dr. Donna Benton, about the CRC network and how they can support Californians in all 58 counties. So for decades, we've been supporting caregivers. We know in California, caregivers, unpaid family caregivers, friend caregivers, kin caregivers, provide the vast majority of long-term care in our state. Estimates are about 65% of all care is provided informally by family and friend caregivers. In recent years, our governor, Gavin Newsom, introduced California's Master Plan for Aging. We're now in year 5 of this 10-year blueprint for our state, And one of the 5 bold goals of the Governor's Master Plan for Aging is caregiving that works. It was so important when we prioritized as a state 5 years ago where we would put our focus and energy, that one of the 5 categories of focus, one of the 5 bold goals, was caregiving that works. So today, I hope we explore what we have in common, where support exists, and that we can get across that help is accessible and available across our state. Thank you for including me in your panel.
Thank you so much for that great welcome and overview. We begin now with 2 people who can share directly with us their experience as caregivers and how they've come to learn where to get support, what kind of resources have been helpful to them, and above all, how caregiving has impacted their lives and, of course, provided incredible, meaningful support for those they are caring for. We begin with Dan Salinger. Thank you, Dan.
Well, thank you so much, and good morning to everybody. My name is Dan Salinger, and I am a family caregiver. I take care of my dad, who is 93 years old. And I can tell you, I was a caregiver long before I knew I was a caregiver. I've had my dad with me for about 5 years, but the caregiving journey really started about 10 or more years ago. As his symptoms became more pronounced, more symptoms showed up. And it started while my dad was living on his own in a Del Webb house, retired, not too far from where my mom lives, despite their divorce 40 years ago. But during that period, we started, taking care of things for my dad. First of all, my brother and I, who lives in the same town, were with him every single day. I mean, we didn't 7 days a week. Everything seemed to be going fine. And then symptoms started to appear, such as my dad came to my house like he always did for the prior 10 years. And he took a nap at my house probably 1,000 times in the previous 5 years, almost every day. And one day he walked into the room that he had napped in so many times and said, "Oh, you put in a new room." I will tell you, that was the first, severe symptom that really kind of opened our eyes. And wow, this is not normal. This is not normal aging. Something is happening. And then a couple of other things happened. I found him a couple of months later walking around with a cashier's check, a large amount. He had closed an account and he was walking around with the cashier's check in his wallet, totally out of character for him. I will try and slow down. I'm sorry. And I found the cashier's check. It was ripped and bent. And had that been lost, it would have been gone forever and nobody would have ever known. And then we move on to something that is incredibly common, I think, driving. So although my dad was living alone, we were monitoring his routes to and from our house or wherever he happened to be going. And I would be following him on my phone and see that he turned the wrong way at an intersection that he's probably navigated through, thousands of times before. And I'd call him up and, "Dad, where are you going?" "I don't know how I got here." And he'd turn around and he'd get home. And that was kind of the way we lived for a couple of years until that fateful day. I woke up, thinking everything is the same. And I was going about my business. And when we saw my dad that day, we noticed that he had a big bruise and some cuts on his face. And of course, he didn't know where they came from. And that was the day that my dad moved into my brother's house. My brother had just recently divorced, and it seemed to be, "Oh, that's perfect. My dad can move in with you and everything will be fine." And he did that. And he lived with my dad for about 6 months. And then he needed a break and he came to stay with my wife and I. And it was during that week that we realized that it was just too hard for anybody to do alone. I mean, hard. And this is back when he was ambulating, when he was, talking and bathing himself, using the restroom himself. He could make himself meals and things. And we realized it was just too difficult, and we started switching. He'd spend a couple of days at Mark's house and a couple of days at my house. And that worked real well for a couple of years until the symptoms became too difficult. And, he'd wake up and not know where he was. So we took him in full time. That was about 2.5 years ago. And since then, he's been living as a full-time member in our house. And again, at the beginning, he was ambulating well and taking care of himself. And that went great for a couple of years. And then last March, again, I woke up not thinking anything was going on, and it was going to be a normal day. But unfortunately, my dad fell down and broke his hip that day going to the bathroom. And again, my life shifted dramatically from that point on. And since then, my dad has been, not ambulatory. We have been assisting him with the bathroom, with showers, eating, getting out of bed, going to bed. Every single need he has now, somebody has to be there. He still walks, but with a walker, and we never let him walk alone. Somebody is always with him. And, and now I'm basically a full-time caregiver along with my wife. And that's what our life revolves around. And, it happened without even realizing. The progression just comes, right? And it doesn't matter what race, creed, religion, economic status. Dementia does not discriminate. It comes after people, and the ravages are going to come regardless of what your standing is in life. And that's the reality that we have been living with for the last 5 years. And it is extremely difficult, as caregivers know. And you're talking, you've already, all the needs, the respite, financial pressure, the isolation, the breaks, the community networking that helps you get through difficult moments. All of those are being discussed, and they're all incredibly important. I will say this about caregiving. 10 years ago, I was living my life, and I was working full time, and I was playing full time, and I ended up having a heart attack in 2019, and that kind of made me open my eyes to family and what's really important in life. And the timing was about perfect, as my dad came to live with us during COVID. And the one thing that the strong message I can pass along is caregiving is the most difficult thing I've ever undertaken in my entire life, but it's also one of the most rewarding things. And I think it's really important that people understand that. I like myself today a lot more than I did when I was working and playing full time. I am a better person. I am more empathetic, and it has made a difference in my life and the connection with other caregivers and even my own family. And as they come together to help in the way they can, I've built bonds that I never thought I would build, strengthened other bonds. And the bottom line is I'm a happier person. I'm a better person as a result of my caregiving experience. Sandy, you were muted.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. That was such a powerful testimony. There are a number of questions in the chat. Just one before we go to Alma, and then we'll circle back with questions for both of you. When you were full-time working, not as a caregiver, you were an attorney, correct?
Correct.
How have you managed to make this transition financially sustainable?
It was incredibly difficult. And it is still difficult, because when I made the transition, and again, it wasn't just for caregiving, it had to do with my own health issues as well. But as I made that transition, I'm living off a lot less than I did before. And a lot of that can be You know, we can deal with it with life changes. And obviously we're not out having expensive dinners or taking vacations because of our caregiving duties. So it has been a very difficult transition. Fortunately, I was in a position where I had some assets. I sold a house and for a couple of years was living off the money from selling a house. And then I'm incredibly fortunate that my dad became really popular on social media, and that helped bridge some of the financial strain for me. But that can't be, you know, that's hitting the lottery. So absent the social media, I would still be struggling significantly and maybe taking advantage of some of these resources that I am just now learning about after 5 years of caregiving. It has been difficult.
Right. Please hold on. We'll hear from Alma, and then we'll take questions, many questions already on the chat. Thank you so much. And Alma, please share your story with us, Alma Valencia.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining and thank you for the invitation. I am very, very much honored to be here. My name is Alma Valencia, and my mom's name is Arminda Vargas Valencia, and I am her full-time caregiver. My mom is living with FTD, frontal temporal dementia, or frontal temporal degeneration. And we have been on the journey for over 10 years now. It officially started in 2015 when I had to sell my mom's house. But like many of us, we don't realize that we are caregivers. You know, we just step into the role of just, you know, doing our due diligence. We're good daughters, we're good sons, we're good family members, you know, helping each other out. But there's different levels to it. Yes, you do help other people, but being a full-time caregiver is quite a different experience. As I mentioned, our journey started in 2015 when we had to I had to step into the role of becoming my mom's power of attorney. Things that I had never even heard of, and navigating systems that I just never thought I would have to. But the reason we had to do this was because my mom started showing signs. Her behavior started changing, and we felt like we really needed to pay closer attention to her. So before this, just like Dan had mentioned, where his parents were divorced, my parents were divorced as well. And mom was living on her own, and she was managing on her own, you know, paying her bills, taking care of her home, buying her own groceries. But whenever I would go visit on the weekends, or I would just check in on her during the week, I started noticing that bills started to pile up, or that undesirable people would come and visit mom. And I'm like, who are you inviting, mom? So again, her behavior just started to change, and she was in her late 50s. And I'm like, this isn't normal. But we just explained it away as being menopause, or maybe mom was going through a midlife crisis. She was under a lot of stress, you know, now living on her own after a very difficult divorce. But again, we noticed changes in family dynamics. She started having more issues, like just and misunderstandings. And so we didn't know what was happening until my mom stopped paying her mortgage. And so I had to sell her home. Mom moved in with her sister, and her other sister also had Alzheimer's. So there's one sister taking care of two sisters with what at the time we didn't know it was dementia. We just thought mom, again, was having a midlife crisis. I became her power of attorney, took over her finances, took her to the doctor, and they diagnosed her with depression and alcoholism. And that was it. A few years later, she was finally diagnosed with dementia. And that was it. And then a few years later, she was diagnosed with frontal temporal dementia.
Right. Alma,
Yes.
it would be so helpful to know how you were able to step away from full-time work to assume this responsibility of taking care of your mother. How were you able to afford it?
Oh, yes. So during all of this time, I was also working full time. And as a lot of caregivers, we are like balancing our own personal lives. I was working full time in the fashion industry, working up the corporate ladder and trying to figure out what was happening with mom. Eventually, due to COVID in 2019, I had to become my mom had to move in with us. And I ended up qualifying, or mom ended up qualifying for IHSS.
Which is?
And it was very challenging to let go of my career and step into this new role of, okay, I'm an IHSS provider. And so mom is.
Just for those of us who don't always know the acronym.
Yes.
In-home services, or maybe I could ask Susan to just give a quick summary of IHSS under Medi-Cal.
Sure. Sandy, would you like me to do that now?
Yes, sure.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Alma, thank you for raising that. I had put in the chat, there's a program called In-Home Supportive Services, IHSS. It's administered by all 58 counties in the state of California. It is the largest Medicaid home and community-based waiver in the nation. I believe we serve over 800,000 individuals, from children to adults to older adults. And the majority of the direct care workers, the people who provide the support in the home, are paid family members and relatives.
Great. Sorry, Alma, that is just such an important question I can see in the chat. But please tell us, I mean, the difficulty of adjusting to this, what you and Dan have both done to transform your lives. How did your family respond to this? Are you married? Do you have children? And how did your family dynamics
Yes.
react?
So I am part of the sandwich generation. I'm married. I have a son in college and my little one in high school now. Well, actually, my son graduated from college. But at the time, during our journey, my little one, my mom helped me raise her. Even though we saw really odd behavior, we were still thinking that mom was going to get better. You know, we just lived this life of, you know, somebody's going to step in. I, as I mentioned, I was working and, you know, trying to build my career. And whenever I work in anything, or whenever I work on a project, I like deep dive into it. So I was very dedicated to my work. And my mom is a baby of 12. I genuinely believed that family was going to step in and help. And that was not the case, because of how my mom was behaving. Nobody understood. And once we received the dementia diagnosis of frontotemporal dementia, I was able to learn more about it and educate our family members that a lot of what she was displaying was beyond her control. But that took years of advocating for mom. And the dynamics changed in our house. It was really, really challenging, having to for my kids to see their grandmother changing, that, you know, they didn't understand. So I also took it upon myself to educate them, you know, and thank God my husband has been, spouses in general, are just such, they're unseen heroes. They really are, because they support so well. And I know Dan has shared, his wife has been very supportive. My husband Juan has been my rock, and he has.
So,
had-
sorry, but just because of time constraints, I want to ask both of you
yes.
questions
Well,
reflected by questions in the chat. Both of you went into this learning as you went. To what extent were you able to actually find support to help you understand and help you improve in how you were caring for your family member? In Dan's case, his dad, in your case, your mom. What resources were you able to tap? How can you help us explain to ourselves and our audiences where to go? Where did you go? Or did you just sort of learn as you went? Dan?
Well, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. First, and that's a great question, and I'll get to it, but I have to cover a couple of things Alma said that are so important. You know, her mom helped raise her daughter, maybe not perfectly, but the important thing to realize there is that just because people have dementia doesn't mean they don't have utility, and they can be a valuable member of a family unit despite their dementia. There are times, you know, that I don't know if they're called, you know, moments of clairvoyance or moments of clarity, but my dad has brought us a lot of joy, in addition to the difficulty. So that's very important. Thank you for bringing that up, Alma. Also, thank you to my wife. That's a very, very difficult thing. Anytime you're bringing somebody in and you're married, you're disrupting both lives. And it was not an easy decision for my wife at the beginning. It was difficult. And luckily, she has transformed into this amazing mother-like caregiver that I was just watching her last night change my dad at 3 a.m. as I'm up with the video camera, and I couldn't do it without her. And I'm sure Alma feels the same way about Juan. And as far as reaching out for services, you know, you don't, as you fall into caregiving, and it's nothing that people typically plan for. Most people fall into it. And I was not aware of any services. I was very lucky that I'm not by any means rich or wealthy, you know, where it's not an issue, but I had enough resources that I knew we could care for him. And he had enough resources that if there was, you know, if we needed anything, like when we needed in-home paid nursing care, he was able to cover that. And I was incredible. I have 5 siblings, and they all help to whatever extent they can. And they're all grateful. There was a text just this morning on our family text, and I'll be quick. And it was thanking my wife. So one of my siblings said, you know, Danielle, I just want to thank you. The entire family appreciates everything you're doing. And that meant everything.
Okay, I have to apologize because we have such a short time span, but if you would look at the questions on the chat, each of you, and perhaps respond as you can, and then let us circle back after our next 2 speakers for final 10 minutes of Q&A with both of you, and I'm so sorry to cut you short. There's so much more we want to hear from you, but each of you has helped us understand caregiving is transformative, and not only in the new responsibilities you acquire and the family dynamics, but in how you see yourselves. And in both your cases, there is this incredible spirit of, I could almost say, appreciation and joy in finding work, in finding caring is work you deeply care about. Caring, you've given us a very powerful sense of this. I want to go now because so important for all of us in reporting this story is what are the services, resources, information that could help people as we discover our caregiving roles, could help us do the caring in a more effective way and with perhaps less stress, less isolation. And for that, we begin with Paul Dunaway. Paul, thank you. And we're looking forward for you as director of the Sonoma County Adult and Aging Division of the California Association of Area Agencies on Aging to tell us about what is referred to as the AAAs, how they provide services to caregivers in every county in the state.
Certainly. Thank you, Sandy. And I will try to do as much of that as I can. I first want to actually thank Alma and Dan for sharing your stories. I think that it's paramount for anybody to be thinking of the personal stories as the most important guiding light in what it is that we need to address. Jessica, if you have my slides, thank you so much. So I'd also start by saying if I had to pick one war cry, considering all of the services that we provide, at least in my agency, it's the need to recognize and deliver on the needs of caregivers. In its essence, caregiving is both an intensely personal act and profoundly shared one. It also has the potential of being deeply isolating. Today, I want to take a few minutes to share with you the supports available to caregivers through the Area Agency on Aging. Now that I see the slides up, go ahead and switch to the next one. A little bit of a delay. So the next slide has a quote in it that I just want to read. There are only 4 kinds of people in this world: those who have been caregivers, those who are currently caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who will need caregivers. Thank you. This quote, I didn't actually hear it for the first time from the former First Lady, but I heard it from Dr. Benton, who is going to be speaking right after me. I want to say that I hold her in the highest esteem in the area of caregiving, and I'm tremendously honored to be a part of this call with her. The quote basically means that caregiving is a universal experience, and we benefit ourselves, our loved ones, and our communities when we allow it to be a shared experience. None of us can thrive in isolation, and yet the physical and emotional demands of caring for a loved one can leave us feeling alone, isolated from work, friends, and family. Next slide, please. So your local area agency on aging, that we fondly call the AAA, is well aware of the challenges and priorities and resources, not only to support those who need care, but also for those who are doing the caring. For the unpaid family and friends who set aside responsibilities and passions, like you heard from Dan and Alma, to offer care for those who need it. We know the type of support each caregiver, family, and community needs is different for everybody, and for that reason, we offer a wide range of trainings and supports for caregivers. Next slide, please. For those who gravitate towards education and skill building, we offer a host of trainings that will expand critical knowledge related to caregiving while also creating space for supportive relationships to grow and flourish. Training topics will vary across communities, but often include everything from emergency preparedness for the caregiver to dementia care 101 to an array of rotating topical trainings. In support of your life and learning style, most trainings are offered online and in person. Next slide, please. For caregivers who have more immediate need for rest and social interaction, there are supports to give your physical body and your heart a place to rest and renew, day respite programs, senior social clubs, and grants to support in-home respite can give you time and space to care for yourself. Referral networks are available to connect you to additional supportive services and classes like Tai Chi and yoga that offers a healing space for your body and mind. Support groups and counseling can help you process the new and shifting stage of life you and your loved one are living in. For example, caregivers meet with a family consultant to do a comprehensive intake assessment that address the emotional, physical, and financial needs of the caregiver. The caregiver and social worker work together to develop a plan for caregiver supports that often includes things like counseling, education, support groups, and very importantly, respite, so the caregiver can get a break from caregiving. Next slide, please. Whatever role you play as a caregiver, there's a community of care for you too. Please reach out to your local AAA to learn more about the options available in your neighborhood. Thank you.
That is tremendously valuable information. We will share those slides with everyone on the call. Thank you so much. We now go to Dr. Donna Benton, Director of the USC Family Caregivers Support Center and the Los Angeles Caregiver Resource Center. The LACRC are the CRCs that Susan DeMarois referenced. She will talk about these 11 caregiver resource centers that support caregivers through coaching, counseling, support groups, and workshops. And as a veteran in this field, she'll share personal comments on why caregiving has become central to our lives, and at this particular moment in time, maybe more central than we ever imagined. Dr. Benton.
Thank you so much. And I'm just really honored to be here today and be able to speak on this issue because everyone before me has really given you the story. There's hardly anything that I can add, but I'll try to say a few things about how I've seen caregiving change over the time that I've been involved with caregiving. And then I'll also talk about the Caregiver Resource Centers, which all of the services have already been discussed. And thank you, Paul, for really putting together a slide that I want to steal. So, because he did exactly in a very short period of time, exactly what we need to understand caregiving. But if we think about care in America, we have been, families have always cared for other family members. It's what we've always done. It's always been informal, and we've always provided this care at home. And then people, as time went on and family structures changed, people began to think, oh, nobody's doing caregiving anymore because women are in the workforce. People are living longer. They don't need as much care. But actually, those two factors are actually why caregiving has continued, but has become a little more difficult. As we live longer, as family structures have changed and more people are working, the challenges of caregiving have also changed. And that means that where before when we were providing care, most of the time the care was very acute. People used to live to around, 60. The reason we got Social Security at 65 is because most people lived at an average age of 63 or less. So that's how they decided to give you Social Security at 65. But our caregiving duties were very acute, maybe 3 months, 6 months, a year at most. But with the aging population, more people living longer and into their 80s, we find that we are actually having caregiving lasting sometimes 10 years or more. And with that, this long-term care, we have not changed our policies. Society hasn't caught up with this change in needs, particularly at how complex it is now to care for somebody in your home. It's not just a matter of, what I'm doing at home is I'm just helping somebody dress and bathe. There are complex medication regimens now that have their own side effects, which we now have to understand. People are doing things like you have things where you're having to change somebody's needles, and you're using needles and you're doing pain management, which scares many families because you don't know, like, I don't want to over medicate somebody and harm them. Things that used to probably be done within an institution, within a hospital. What's the new trend? The new trend is called hospital at home. How many of us expected to have our homes turned into a hospital? It's crazy what is now expected of families to do in terms of long-term care in the home that's very complex. So that, and on top of that, you now have people living further apart. More caregivers are working. It's almost, depending on which study you're looking at, you'll see between 60 and 70% of caregivers are still working. And so you're balancing that. People have smaller families. The average is going down every year, and we'll have fewer family caregivers to help for an increasing number of long-lived adults. We're very happy we're all living, but in terms of our impact personally, it means that you may not have as many people who can care for you in the long run. So we've had different changes on what you have to do that impact the caregiver's well-being. We've had different changes in terms of there's been a lack of public infrastructure. We just don't have, there's nothing there to really help families pay for out-of-pocket expenses that often occur with family caregiving that are not completely tied to either having some type of health insurance through Medicaid or Medicare. But after that, there's really no long-term care services and supports for us. And so that's a huge change. Caregivers are invisible, one, because it's what we do. It's our mom, it's our dad, it's a friend, it's a cousin, it's a sibling. And because we do this without thinking of ourselves as caregivers, it is sometimes, like we've heard, I don't think to ask for help. I don't think to look for services for me more than I may even be looking for the person I'm caring for. So we've had this kind of change in our societal values, the healthcare changes, the economic changes where we're losing services. All of these challenges make it very hard, and our policies have not caught up. We don't have as many people, paid caregivers, who can help even an informal family. And we have a lot of systemic barriers for payment rules and health insurance rules, and that have become so complicated that you need a degree in how to handle healthcare financing. So all of this to say that we've had a lot of change in care, but what hasn't changed is our values as family members. We provide care because we want the dignity and respect for the person we're caring for. And we know that that comes from us as family members and friends. And that if we want the person who needs this to get the best, then we become the ones that are going to be the navigators, the advocates, and the hands-on care for family members. But in order for us to maintain that now, we do need some more wraparound social supports. So that's what I, think about care and how it's changed over time. To talk briefly about the Caregiver Resource Centers, because I know we're running up on our last 10 minutes. You heard Paul really gave an excellent description of all the services that you can get from the California Caregiver Resource Centers. There are 11, and we cover the state from tip to tip. So somewhere, and I'll put the link in the chat as soon as I finish, so that you can go online, find out who's your local Caregiver Resource Center. And most Caregiver Resource Centers collaborate with the area agencies on aging. And so we work together so that you get the maximum number of services and support by having joint and work with the area agencies on aging, Title III programs, and the Caregiver Resource Centers, which have been around for 40 years. So we're caregiving experts across the board. Oh, and somebody already put that in there, caregivercalifornia.org. Thank you. So I'll leave it there. I can't hear you, Sandy.
I get so caught up, I forget I've muted myself. There's so much background traffic outside my window. A very quick question from the chat, Donna. Are people who are undocumented eligible to access training, the kind of services and resources from the centers or poll from the AAAs, or is there a barrier based on legal status?
For the Caregiver Resource Centers, we don't look at income. These are your tax dollars at work. And so you can access the education programs, most of which are online. And so document status doesn't apply particularly for our education programs.
And Paul, do you want to reference the 3As?
I can. I can't think of any services that collect immigration status and would therefore be a barrier and would encourage anybody to reach out for those services. I did see a chat question asking about in-home supportive services. There are barriers for having special immigration status or adequate immigration status.
For actually getting IHSS. Susan, do you have anything to add to that? Many of our media serve immigrant populations, and that is always for mixed status families and others a very pertinent question.
I would build off of what Paul said and encourage anyone who thinks they might be eligible to pursue that and find out, because it does vary. I can't speak broadly to who might qualify and who might not, but as a state, we want people to come forward and to be identified and assessed for all programs that they may be eligible for.
Great. There's a question from Nestor Fantini, which I'll ask in the interest of time, and it really is for our two storytellers, which is looking back at your journey, what resources would have really made a difference or helped you along the way? Now you may know about them, but what would you tell the person coming after you? Be sure to know you can access these resources or services I wish I had known early on. Dan, we'll start with you.
Sure. There's so many resources that I could have taken advantage of. Probably
You're
important because as first. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Dan, you're cutting in and out.
Is this any better?
Yes.
Okay, I apologize. I've got music here. I was saying the caregiving resources that I wish I had known about the
Oh, we're so anxious to hear what you have to say, but it's hard to hear you, Dan. Maybe you could answer very quickly or add your answer in the chat.
You got it. If you can hear me, the most important resources in the beginning would be educational, understanding what's happening and understanding what is going to happen to the caregiver emotionally as they try and learn these new skills and cope with somebody with dementia. Education, support, letting the caregiver know that they are normal and that the frustration, the feeling of like you're overwhelmed, the depression, the isolation, the way you feel is normal. And that helps, just knowing that, everything you're going through, all the other caregivers have gone through that or are currently going through it.
Right. Thank you. Alma, what would you say you would tell the caregiver who comes after you? Resources you felt either were most valuable to you or you wish you had accessed?
I wish I would have had the access through the first person that you received the diagnosis from at the doctor's office. I wish that all of these resources would be displayed at all doctors' offices, including care partners on social media, just so that you can find whatever you need. Because I as soon as I heard the dementia diagnosis, I immediately went to the Alzheimer's Association, but my mom was not displaying any of the symptoms that a person with Alzheimer's would have. And so I felt very lost. So I really had to reach out through social media. And that is when I started my mom's page in 2018. And that is how I just started to really just not give up and really search for answers. And luckily now, again, through social media, we have the access for these resources, the USC Leonard, LACRC Caregiver Center. I was actually just at the CARE conference last weekend, and I was able to share and spread awareness about FTD through the AFTD Association. So you just can't give up. To any caregiver out there, any family caregiver out there, there are resources. Do not give up. We just keep.
That's a very powerful message. Thank you. We have to go to our wrap-up question now. And this is difficult because we've talked about so many aspects of caregiving, and the questions are just so rich. There's so many good questions I wish we had gotten to, which I hope our speakers will look at after the call and perhaps just send us your remarks and we'll share them with everybody on the briefing. But let me go to the final wrap-up question. Caring isn't a word we hear very often in today's political context. We hear of division, disinformation, distrust. I can't think of a more inspiring idea than the idea of caring and giving care and what care means. You have opened up to us the possibilities by accessing the Department of Aging, by accessing the centers that Dr. Benton and the 3As, the agencies Paul Dunaway has spoken about, and then we will share with you the social media posts of both our storytellers. You have opened to us something I never knew when I was a caregiver for both my dad and my husband. I never knew there were places I could go that would have made me a more effective caregiver. And even now, there's a question, when is care too much? When are you intruding? When are you causing stress by your visits rather than laying back and letting people, well, it's very hard to tell. This is such a difficult, and as Dan said, there is a tendency to say, well, their life is sort of over. It's up to us to fill their lives. No, that's not the case, you've said. This is such a rich area. I'd like each of our speakers to just say, what is your message to our audiences about the importance of being caregiving? In some ways, we could all fear it. And one of the great questions is, how do we plan for it? How do we plan to become caregivers, both for others and for ourselves? It's been a wonderful hour of self-reflection and learning. What is your final message for us to give our audiences about the importance and meaning of caring? Susan.
Well, someone said it best that we often fall into caregiving, and sometimes it happens overnight with a fall or a stroke. And on Saturday, you're not a caregiver. On Sunday, you are because of an event. And for other people, it happens slowly over time. We heard that today too. It builds up. And I would just say that similar to what we do with children, very few new parents wait until the day that they need daycare or childcare to make a plan. Similarly, for elder care, it's so important to learn and understand and know these resources before you need them and before you're in a crisis. So whether it's for a family member or friend or a paid caregiver, we seldom make the best choices and decisions in a crisis.
Thank you. Paul Dunaway, your thoughts.
Yes, thank you. It was in my first slide, making caregiving a community. I think that in our westernized culture, we've prioritized independence entirely too much, and the word should be interdependence. Switching from aging in place to aging in place together. For those who need the resources, please contact the AAAs. We have resources to give, and continue to advocate for those needs.
Thank you. Dr. Benton.
Advocate for yourself and for your family. Caregiving is something that is a family affair, and we need to advocate for it, beginning, as Susan said, and as Paul already has said too. You have to start early, and it's important for families to think about this, because we're all aging longer, and how do you want your care to be in the future?
Thank you. And now to our two storytellers who opened this topic for us. Dan, what is your message to our audiences about not being afraid of, but embracing the possibilities of caregiving?
Well, you just hit on it with your last sentence. Nobody envisions themselves being a caregiver as they're working. In fact, most people would think, that I could never do that. My message is, don't be afraid to take on the task of caregiving. It is incredibly difficult, but again, the rewards come back in space. It is a very rewarding experience. It is tough, but it is doable. It's humanity. It's being human. I would point out that 100 years ago, we didn't have any resources or any care centers. People simply took care of their own at home. And it is possible, and it can be a valuable experience.
Thank you. And Alma Valencia, thank you so much. And it was an honor to meet your mother yesterday over Zoom. I hope she's joining this, because part of your message is that we're all in this together, including the person we care for. what is your message to us?
Well, one thing my mom taught us was to be resourceful. And so I really have taken that and ran with it as much as I can. And I am grateful for resources such as the California Department of Aging and so many others. I always say that caregiving is hard, but not impossible. And in terms of dementia care, until there's a cure, there's community. And so you have to find your community.
Each of you have given us such great sound bites and headlines and so much more. Thank you. Do you know that very few people left the conference throughout the hour? We rarely keep everybody on the call. So my deep thanks to all our media, to our interpreters, to our speakers, and to the Department of Aging for co-hosting today's briefing. Caring is love. Caring is life.